Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves. Today, I'm super excited to have Soumam Debgupta, CTO for the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services, Rob Lloyd, CTO for the City of Seattle, and Chris Chirgwin, CIO for the County of Santa Barbara. Welcome to the Public Sector Show by TechTables.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, since you're the closest to me and a returning TechTables guest, what are you at? Is this 3?
This is the second live podcast, but third time we've done this.
That's right. That's right. So for those who don't know you, quick intro.
Joined the County of Santa Barbara as their first CIO 2 years ago. Prior to that was in the private sector for my whole career. I've ran and owned a couple of e-service companies, and most recently selling one in 2021, and then joined the public sector. Earlier today, I heard one of your members say that they are a girl dad, and I've got 3 daughters as well, 2018 and 15. A lot of drama in our house. Makes work sometimes easy. So that's a quick overview.
Yeah, big soccer dad, right?
I've, played soccer for a long time, coached soccer for about 12 years, club and high school soccer, and all 3 of my daughters have played or are currently playing. My middle daughter's up at Eastern Washington University playing for them.
Soumam?
I joined Washington State December of last year, so probably most recent amongst everyone here that you would have heard. 20 years in private sector, working in big tech, both across consumer product side of the house as well as enterprise applications, now leading the overall technology transformation that we're trying to do in our biggest health and human services agency. And looking forward to the conversation today.
Love it. Rob?
I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the City of Seattle. I am 35 days old in the organization, so just came over in June. Was previously the Deputy City Manager for Transportation, Aviation, and Technology, and Planning and Permitting for the City of San Jose. Before that, for 6 years, I was the CIO for them and had a lot of fun there. About 16 years as a CIO and CISO before that, but also 4th time here and have a lot of fun with the TechTables crew. Glad to be here.
Yeah, excited. Soumam, let's kick off with you. You launched a newsletter, Customer First Thinking, on how to build and apply a customer first mindset in everything you do. I did read it. For those of you who are thinking, how did you just throw this into ChatGPT? No, I did read the newsletter. It was great. As the CTO for the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services, how have you aligned your technology strategies with the broader organizational goals, especially with your focus on innovation and customer satisfaction that you were touching on so much?
Absolutely, and I can attest you did read because you commented on it, so I know you read it.
Yeah.
So one of the ways, so when I came in, our secretary was very clear when she hired me that she said, one of the primary reasons I'm bringing you on is because of your background around human-centered design and the work you've done around customer mindset in various roles that you've had. And that's what I want embedded in this organization. Over the last 6-7 months since I've been there, we've been working on setting what we call as the vision and the foundation for our agency. And in that article, I demonstrated the house of DSHS, as we call it, that we released publicly. And you will see the foundation of that house is technology. Because one of the things that we are really trying to drive is everything that we do in the agency is amplified by the leverage of technology in those actions, right? And it's the only mechanism in which we can truly identify how clients engage with us and whether those engagements have both positive or negative reactions to it. Because without that measurement factor in place, it's very hard to say how is our services being perceived. And a simple thing that we did to drive that customer first mindset within our organization was every time we used to kick off a project, we used to define outcomes, and outcomes would be like, the outcome used to be defined by, we are releasing this new form because the ledge asked for this, or we're doing this new application because it makes our lives easier. And we started saying that, okay, every project that we're going to do from now on, we need to write what is the client-facing outcome that originates from it. And if a project does not have a client-facing outcome, they will really have to justify to me why it's worth the approval. Just having that mindset of defining an outcome from the client's lens has been very motivating for the team, because that connection was not as evident in the past as it's now for everyone.
That's great. Rob, the One Seattle plan is a bold initiative by Mayor Harrell, developed over 2 years of community input to address housing affordability, equity, and sustainability while preparing for significant population growth. I know that because I came here a month ago and I drove all around Seattle, and you just have water everywhere, which makes it tough for new building. You can only build up, right? This is like Santa Barbara. You got the ocean and the mountains. As you get up to speed in your new role as a CTO for the city of Seattle, what excites you most about the mayor's plan and vision for the city?
So I think if you take a look at all the big and mid-sized cities right now, they're all facing some of the most transformative challenges that cities have ever run into. And the other part of it is that none of those challenges is just one department anymore. Once upon a time, it could be just a policing challenge. It could just be a transportation challenge. It could just be a parks and rec challenge. But if you talk about how we deal with homelessness, how we deal with public safety, how we deal with lower acuity response to mental health crises, how we deal with Vision Zero, everything now is multi-departmental, and technology plays an integral role in how we deal with information, how we connect work, how we connect people, how we collaborate. And so the joke and analogy that I usually have is there's no longer swim lanes, there's water polo. We have a goal, we're all together, we're shooting at that goal, and we're working together. And we have to play that role masterfully and relentlessly on some of these things, because nothing before has worked. And Mayor Harrell's approach is wonderful in that it does three things exceptionally well. One is it engages the community and says, these are your priorities, and we are going to go at these fearlessly, and there's nothing sacred about the old ways we've done these things. They've deconstructed the old public safety answering points where we said 911 was sacred and the old way we did it. No, it's not. And so we have the care team, and we're going to approach it differently, and we've taken it out of the police department, and we're going to try different things. We might get some things wrong, but we're going to get a lot of things right. And we're going to give ourselves permission to try some different things. If you talk about the partnerships, he has actually a joke. Sometimes you have to step on the scale even though you don't like the number. But we're going to look at data, and we're going to tell ourselves the truth, and we're going to work with the community and go at our problems very hard, but we're also going to go at them together. And so he's demanding collaboration between all of his departments. And that level of cooperation, collaboration is actually, in my experience, really rare in government. Often, we're allowed to be little fiefdoms, and that's not okay anymore. And so he demands that of himself and his team, and that, I think, percolates all the way through the organization. And the last thing is just the demand that technology play its role, because it is the catalyst and the only tool we have in the organization that makes one person look like 1 or 3 or 10, and that can give situational awareness and wisdom pervasively through the organization. And he comes at it because he has a tech background and a law background, and he's played that leadership role for a long time in Seattle, and he grew up 8 blocks from City Hall. So he has this investment, this knowledge, all these relationships, and it's very much his personality and his wisdom and his perspective in that. But a mayor to have that kind of focus and that kind of insistence and that relentlessness, this is a magic moment. So truly excited by it.
That's awesome. Chris, so Santa Barbara County is actively consolidating its GIS resources to improve data sharing and collaboration across the departments and other counties. And I know you're big on collaboration. How are you aligning the IT consolidation with the broader objectives of the county?
It's really interesting to listen to what Rob was just saying and what they're doing at the city of Seattle. At the county of Santa Barbara, we're doing some very similar things. In fact, yours is One Seattle, ours is One County, One Future. And so from the top down within the organization, we're really trying to break down the silos, the fiefdoms that you mentioned. 23 departments at the county. And traditionally, and I think this is probably not dissimilar to a lot of other counties, the way they're structured, is you've got these 23 different organizations that kind of do their own thing, right? We're really have a concerted effort right now through a new strategic plan coming down from the CEO's office, IT, central IT. We just completed a county-wide IT strategic plan that aligns with the master plan and really going above and beyond in terms of understanding not only the departmental needs, but understanding the constituent needs. really trying to gather as much input, as much information as we can, as much feedback as we can, as we put these now strategic plans and tactical plans in place to start sharing data. You mentioned GIS, right? We had 5 different GIS groups within the county that were not working together. Now we're working together. It's just one small example, but we're trying to do that across all departments, across many different initiatives that are taking place at the county, not just technology, but in many other areas as well. So it's a large effort. It takes time. There's a little bit of politics that come about, but I think that's pretty normal. But I would say we're already starting to see some significant strides in what we're doing.
And Joe, if I can double down on what Chris said, and maybe a point that you made as well, is the human-centered design starts with listening first. And where technologists often fail is you bring your knowledge and you solution too early. Yep. And as CIOs and CTOs, the trick is listening hard for a while first and working with your departmental peers and listening to those problems and seeing that constellation of needs and saying what problems are you trying to solve, and then painting that technology picture. But I think you're hearing 3 people say the same thing: is if you're really trying to build that collaborative bridge, you listen a lot first, and then you paint that picture of technology direction, and then you can get that support and that architecture and that strategy that actually can honor the organization.
Agreed.
That's fantastic. So, ma'am, your department has placed significant emphasis on technology innovation for the purpose of service delivery. How have you scaled those innovations to serve the 2.7 million residents?
Let me start with a basic principle that we put in place, which is when we came in, we said, we're going to start making our agency and walk the talk of making our government transparent, accountable, and accessible, right? And one of the ways we did that was when we published our first maiden 5-year strategy plan, and we published it on our website. We very clearly articulated the objectives that were priority for us from a technology perspective. We even wrote down measures, and we committed to the public that every quarter we're going to report our progress against those measures. So you exactly know where we stand. And there's some concerns like, what if we don't achieve? And my point is, trust me, the public today believes we are not achieving anything. So even if you get to 50 or 60%, they would at least love the transparency than saying we are not achieving 100% of it. In that, we made a very strong and bold commitment of institutionalizing what we call as the customer satisfaction score, and taking a target to achieve 85% customer satisfaction score by 2027. We have never measured it, but we've taken a target. There's a real risk that we won't meet it, but aiming for that high bar, even if we come short by a few digits, that's fine, because then there is a dedicated attention to it. Now, what are we doing to achieve that? There are multiple initiatives that's going on within our agency. I'll talk about 2 that's very central to our strategy. One is the 2.7 million residents that come to us are all seeking benefits. On an average today, for a person to seek benefit to us takes them about 50 minutes of form filling to even submit an application. Our caseloads are so high that there are clients waiting for over 2 hours to speak to a benefits manager to understand what's happening with their application, what the status of their application is, and answer very basic questions. We have a huge intra-agency program called the Integrated Eligibility and Enrollment, where we're going to give a single door for citizens and residents of Washington State to apply to all of the benefits related to health and human services through one single application. We actually created one common application form, ran a pilot, and we were amazed to see that people actually were able to cut down their application enrollment filling time by over half with that new application. So we're now going to start rolling that application out. The second thing that we did was we looked at the kind of questions people were calling in and asking to our contact centers. And we identified 10 questions that were being asked all the time. And we straight away put those 10 questions up as FAQs. Very simple examples, right? Nothing rocket science in it, but simple FAQs on the website, on your application page, and a chatbot. That is it's not a very elegant chatbot at this point in time, but if you asked any of those 10 questions, you would get very clear answers to it. it eliminates more than 20% of the inbound call volume that we get. Another simple thing that we did was 40% of people calling to us were basically calling in to just ask, hey, is my application approved? And they were waiting over 2 hours on the phone to speak to somebody just to know that answer. We started building on an application tracker, and that's going to go live before the end of this year, where those clients won't ever have to talk to somebody to know what's happening with their application. They would almost like a pizza delivery tracker know what's happening with their application, which stage they are in. So simple things like these doesn't have to be everything doesn't have to be a space colony, right? Very simple things drive very meaningful impact in the day-to-day experience of our clients. Another big initiative that we are doing is we run a lot of state facilities that provide care, right? Medical care, behavioral health, and so on and so forth. Many of these facilities didn't even have we're starting to institutionalize electronic health records. In the absence of electronic records, this is what our clients had to do. They would have to carry with them bags and bags of actual records over the course of their entire treatment plans with us and bring it in every conversation and every appointment that they had. Some of those we literally used to see somebody would come in and load it on a tray and they would roll it into the doctor's office and therefore the appointment. In today's day and age, that's a very ridiculous experience to give. So we're in the process of digitizing our entire electronic health record system in all of our healthcare facilities. Those are the two big ones. There are countless. So we are a very large agency and we touch a pretty big footprint. So there are like another 20 plus things that we're doing, all catered towards those small, you can even call it paper cuts on customer experience that we are taking the time to solve for.
Yeah, that's great. I love the Domino pizza tracker example that you used when I could eat it because I'm gluten-free now. But back in the day, that was my favorite to see the tracker. Remind me, when JR was the guest speaker on the collaboratory, he was showing, what tracker was he showing? I don't think it was emergency management. What was he showing the group?
Project management.
Okay, project management. Okay.
Yes.
So I think it's really great just to get visibility across the organization. We're going to talk about it later, but I did share traction with him. Okay. Yeah, big fan of that. But Rob, real quick, I just want to build on the One Seattle plan. Sure. And what role will, and it'll be a big role, will data and digital infrastructure play in ensuring that the developments in the plan are both equitable and sustainable for the city?
And so I think that can be answered 2 ways. One is on the equity level, every department is looking for ways to make sure that the decisions that we make are extensible to those equity decisions. So on the infrastructure level, for example, we have a huge bond levy that's out there to the community. And as we make investments in bridges and streets, we want to make sure that it's informed by, for example, the pavement quality index, but also that those investments are being distributed to neighborhoods on an equity score as well. So we have an equity atlas, and it's informed by both of those and community feedback. Same as we have with other services and police and in hiring and in our education. We have a special revenue source that we can invest in schools and programs. Seattle is actually a national leader in making sure that the community honors who matters and that representation is there. And we have a balancing of things where that was a really high priority, but right now we also are trying to balance that with public safety, homelessness, and other priorities that are really high right now too. But those are not competing. They're actually equal, but to be balanced with each other. Equity and some of the housing priorities were even higher maybe about 3-4 years ago. But right now our priorities are even higher on public safety and homelessness and the housing equation. To answer your question in another way is the systems that we have, the data, the insights, the skills that we have, the AI innovation drives, the innovation demonstration program, the partnerships with our community and companies. That's all part of the engine that we have where we're trying to unleash the brilliance of our organization and our community. And that's part of the mission that IT really has to hold, because there's a lot of potential and brilliance in everything that we have in the human capital and the assets that we have that are the information, but just the people that we have that are amazing, and a community that is tech-oriented, and a bunch of companies that want to be partners, not just to sell us things, but as they promise us, to solve big city challenges. Even one where we're helping create the AI safety and security framework for the nation under Department of Homeland Security to say, how do you create an AI framework that companies, nonprofits, education, universities, and government can create something where we can lean into this without legislators saying, hey, we don't trust AI, so we're going to give you some rules to follow, and whoa, will we all be loving that. The Department of Homeland Security has convened this, but all that to say is we have leaned into this at all three levels of that. Is we want to give those tools, that information, and those capacities to our organization. We want to engage in partnership with our community and our community's companies, all the way to AI House, which is a partnership with our economic development, the state, and companies, and the Allen Institute to incubate and accelerate these companies and do responsible use, all the way to national leadership, which is how do we define how we're going to use these technologies in a responsible way, and the GovAI Coalition and other things where we can say, let's define this for all of us heading forward. All that then connects to just one sum, is unleashing our people, solving city challenges and community problems for all of our benefit.
Chris, in transitioning from the private to the public sector, how have you, and we actually did a whole podcast on this, but it's still great. How have you leveraged your experience with the Entrepreneurial Operating System, known as, there was a book that they wrote, Traction, to set ambitious goals, yet attain those long-term goals for the county, working backwards? How do you ensure accountability for yourself and your team to really drive projects forward, drive those initiatives forward? And I know this because you've shared it inside personally, but you've got your own goal tracker that you demoed, but just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I got to go back 10 to 12 years when I was running a IT services firm, and we were growing, but as we grew, I was recognizing that we were just having all kinds of issues with communication and process and accountability, and it was just becoming very disorganized. And I recognized that we needed some type of an operational framework that would really help all of us be on the same page, improve how we ran meetings, improved our hiring processes, just all those things that are so important to growing a successful organization. And so a peer group that I was in recommended a book that was published in 2012 called Traction. And in the book Traction, it talks about this Entrepreneurial Operating System. So basically a framework for how an organization should run. So we began to implement that in my former company, and it made a significant change in how we ran the business, in how we hired, through all the processes. It really launched our company we doubled in size in a fairly short period of time after we put that in place. When I joined the County of Santa Barbara, I walked into an environment where there was a lot of really good people, but there wasn't a lot of structure. There wasn't a lot of the operational framework that I had become familiar with, but I didn't know how this EOS model that I had learned, how it would translate into the public sector, because the book was really written for the private sector. But I said, I'm going to give it a try. And so sat down in the first 6 months of being there, sat down with my leadership team, introduced them to the concepts, introduced them to the book, had them all read it, became familiar with it, and then we began to implement just little pieces at a time. And I can fast forward to now, and it's made a huge difference in how we run as a department within the county. When you refer to the goal setting and the accountability that we put in place, so what we did was we said, okay, I got my leadership team together and looked at the strategic plan, and we say, okay, these are our 5 major initiatives. Now go back to your respective teams, and your teams now need to set up goals that help us achieve those 5 objectives, right? Now, every member of your team, they need to be responsible for choosing their own goals that align with their team goals, which then obviously align with our department goals, right? And so we captured all these goals across we have about 75 staff members now. We captured all their goals, documented them in a smart sheet. We've got a yellow, red, green, right? So it's transparent to everybody on the team. But the goals were chosen by each member of the team. And so we implemented that over a year ago. And when I went back not too long ago and looked at how we did in the first year of accomplishing those goals, the team combined, the team did over 400 goals that they were successful at. Those would not have been accomplished if we wouldn't have followed this framework, had the transparency, had the accountability that created. And the team loves it. They've really bought into this because they've seen the improvements that have been made within the department in a fairly short period of time. So it was just exciting for me to see something that worked in a prior organization in the private sector translate and work just as well in the public sector.
Yeah, I want to unpack this because it seems so basic, and it is. It's just that nobody does it. And so what I loved about when I was reading Traction and going through the EOS framework was like taking the time. So everyone like jumps into an organization and they want to start tackling initiatives. But why I thought the two of you would get along really well was actually with EOS, you sit down and figure out like, hey, what's this 10-year vision we have? What are the core values? What do we actually believe? Like you said, there's great people coming in, there's great people, but you've got to take time to listen to them, right? You can't just start giving orders, all the way down to getting very tactical with quarterly goals, which they call rocks, and then what they call L10, level 10 meetings. And I was doing this basically by myself, but it's you rank the meeting at the end. And I'm like, how would I rank this meeting for myself? I'm like, man, this is like a 4. I'm like, this is bad. I got to get structured, right? So this is like very helpful as I'm running this. And even just the red, yellow, green, just like understanding, oh, okay, it's very clear. These are the goals. Very quickly, where are we at? And I've got kind of back-end system, same thing. So when I come back to Seattle, got a system, right? So it's got the podcast, got this. I want everything green. If this is yellow or this is red, I got to address this quickly. I got to prioritize. I got to reprioritize. And so I really love that framework and how you started to apply it to the city and just seeing the buy-in and all that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Soumam, your strategic plan includes, you mentioned it, you jumped 85% customer satisfaction score within 2 years. And you may or may not achieve that. I actually love what you said about, hey, if we don't achieve it, but we have a massive improvement, that's awesome, right? I'm a huge believer of like setting those big goals, and maybe I don't hit them. And actually, I think I've thought about it. I don't hit any of my goals. I always come up short because I just set massive goals, but it's still a lot of fun. And I'm not like disappointed or anything, right? So I love that you mentioned that. But what strategies are you implementing to reach, you mentioned it briefly, but I want you to really drill into the, like, how are you measuring the IT excellence on community outcomes?
Yeah, first, just a small comment on the goal, right? So when we took the goal, the 85% was benchmarked against what an industry average good looks like. And it is slightly higher than the industry average. And the reason is that we want to set it at a level that inspires people, but then it's not so far away that it demotivates even the start of it, right? So that was the logic of how we picked that. In terms of specific IT actions we are taking that's measurable, there are 2 ways. In addition to the CSAT, there are 2 specific metrics as a team that we are starting to monitor. So one is what we are calling as the cost to serve, which is, and it shouldn't be a new concept, but think about it this way, is we are in the business as an agency of delivering benefits, right? So benefits are hard dollars that we give, right? Your productivity and efficiency as an agency is a function of how much dollar is spent in delivering $1 of benefit. And the lower the number, the better you're doing your job at. The cost to serve is what we are using to measure, inflation adjusted, are we bringing the cost to serve down through the use of technology? That's a very direct measure of productivity improvement. And if technology doesn't drive that down, it doesn't help. The second measure that we are using is what we are defining as penetration rate. What that means is, if you have in your state 100 people that qualifies for a certain program and a benefit that you have released, how many of those 100 are you getting to, right? Are you giving the benefit to 70 of them, 80 of them, 90 of them? The goal there is to get to 100%, right? How these 2 combined works is, if you reduce the cost to serve, which means you put more money in the ledger's pocket to actually expand those programs and try to get more people covered in those programs, right? So these 2 are linked. And then how does it link to customer satisfaction? Because if you did these two well, what clients really want or residents really want is, if I need a benefit and I get it now, that's all I expect from you. And that's going to drive the customer satisfaction automatically, right? So the customer satisfaction is an output metric. These two kind of are our input metrics to keep an eye out on. Very simple things that we're doing, right? So cost to serve, right? One of the biggest drivers of cost to serve reduction is what percentage of our tasks needs manual intervention or human in the loop intervention, right? There are some statutes that necessitates us that a human has to do certain things, right? Eligibility determinations, we can't use AI, even no matter how advanced AI is. Statute prevents you from using AI to make eligibility determinations, positive or negative, for any of the benefits, right? So we can't use AI there. But in getting to that decision point, there are a lot of manual actions that happen, collecting records, looking at them, parsing out certain financial data to then compare against thresholds and so on and so forth, right? All of those things can be automated. Leveraging, we are going really big on process automation or RPA, robotic process automation, and we are looking at every element of process that's today human touched. How can we start automating that so that we can now add capacity? So it does two things. It reduces the cost to serve, but it also adds capacity, which increases the ability to reach more people. So it also increases penetration. So that's one example, right? On the penetration rate, one of the things, for instance, that blocks us from going and awarding benefits without too much check is we believe there is a lot of people who might start committing fraud, right? People who don't qualify would start availing benefits, right? So we are right now in the process of actually, again, we did this, I think on the state we are doing it, Tech did it once, and we are the second agency doing it. We have just released a challenge procurement where we have said, instead of the standard procurement mechanism of this is the SOW, vendors come and tell us who will deliver it at what cost, we said, this is the problem we are trying to solve. Come back and tell us the most innovative solution that you have to solve that problem. The outcome is what we are trying to write the SOW for. And we are inviting, we don't even know what the solution is. We are not writing an SOW for a solution. We are writing a challenge for a problem we want to solve. And we made that live. We're going to select our vendor there. That's going to address the fraud part. So once that fraud part of it is solved, now we can go in and say, okay, what relaxation in our checks and balances can we do? Because the fraud side is in control, which then allows people who were not applying or were getting cut off because of the barrier to, hey, I need to provide 50,000 things before I even get a benefit. Why bother? I will never get there, right? Those two together will help start driving down that penetration, driving up the penetration rate. One of the examples, right? So there's more that we are doing, but these two I would surface because they go well together.
Yeah, those really great insights. Rob, one of the things that I really picked up on and appreciate from you is just your genuine love for the community. And where I'm going with that is I like how you were like, hey, don't pitch me like a solution. You're looking for this innovative problem. And where I feel like that ties really well in with you, Rob, is you're looking for, hey, how can Wiz help the city of Seattle, right? Not that it's this AI cloud platform. And yeah, no, I would love to hear from you around really on the technology side, what you're looking for to make those impacts.
Sure. And I can answer it a couple different ways. One is outcome-based procurements is a strong tool. More recently, City Innovate and others have called it challenge-based procurements. But the model is outcome-based, where you define, here's the inputs in my environment, here's the outcomes, industry, you show me your brilliance in the middle. And that's a good general partnership model. Another one is where you have an innovation demonstration program in your organization where you say, I'm going to have a $0 engagement, but I can use my city time or county time and assets. You bring company or nonprofit or other government, your assets, and let's create something together. So that's where, for example, we teamed up with Facebook and created Telegraph technology and created that downtown high-speed network. And then they OEM'd it, and now that is a technology that's for sale, that's nanometer. So it's the very high-speed, small cell technology. Mm-hmm. So you can do that too. And the other ones are where you have a really strong team and you've executed really well in your projects and you're engaged with your community, you have good political leadership, but you have a reputation of innovating and delivering for your community. And companies come to you and say, we don't just want to spray and pray and pitch you and sell you something as a transactional relationship, but we want a strategic relationship with you. So a couple examples. Partners with Zoom when they were a $20, $30 million company because Eric Yuan said, I want to do right by my community. You want to do right by your community. We want to invent public engagement technologies. And we think this new standard of remote technologies, high fidelity on this, our 455 standard, as opposed to these old technologies like WebEx and the old Teams, we think we can do better. Will you work with us? And we said, yeah, you're really invested. Let's do that. We created that low dollar PO, and then we worked with them, and then COVID hit, and all that work paid off, and we were instantly a virtual organization in 3 days, and they turned into a $20, $30 billion company. ChargePoint was another one where they said, hey, we have this idea about doing charging stations. We think this would be really good one day when the world adopts EVs. Could you imagine the day? We said, we think we could. But that was a long time ago, before Teslas were really big. And we said, but yeah, let's work together. That's part of our long-term value and goals. And so ChargePoint now is one of those standards where you can see we worked with LLMs before when it was just GPT, no 0.0, no chat. We worked with Claude, with armor blocks, and we were immune to BEC attacks and spam and phishing for a couple years. And we were just hoping that the bad guys didn't discover LLMs either. But we were just dreading the day that they would. But we could work with armor blocks. And then Cisco bought them in Splunk. SASE technologies, we could work with them. But those are different models where you can say, we can work with our assets and you work with your assets. We can procure in a specific mode, or we can have these strategic relationships. But to your point, it's the different modes, what you're trying to accomplish and what time frame and what you're capable of. And the kind of reputation and team that you can develop sets the paths and capabilities and the engines that you have at your disposal. But the technology organization of cities and counties can be pretty brilliant. And they can unlock a lot of what's possible in departments. And once you do a few of those, the departments are partners at a different level. And they come to you with all kinds of new ideas. And you're their first partner as opposed to the partner of last resort and the one they come to thinking you're going to say no. Because they're engaged with their community members. You're engaged too. They see the world of possibilities rather than just doing the basics. And the community is a laboratory as opposed to just the world as it is and what must be. And the last thing I'll tell you is sometimes I coach my organization. Our council sees the world as, because they work with the community, as it should be. Staff often sees the world as it is because we're working with resources. We work with the limits every day. We work with contracts. We work with the city attorney. And if we're doing our job really well, that gap is really small. The world as it should be, all those complaints, the world as it is, all the things we do, there's not much gap. Everything works. But where there's a big gap, people get voted out of office. There's lots of complaints. People say the city or county doesn't work, and lots of things break down. But when that gap is small, there's lots of support. The community is talking with each other. We're solving problems, and the community's in sync. And CIOs and CTOs can be really valuable in the sense that we bridge that, and we cause that bridge to be shorter and smaller. And the leaders of our organization can tell the community, we're solving your problems, and we have the capability of listening to you and bringing you solutions and making you safer and making the community cleaner and bringing you opportunity. And that's a wonderful, wonderful career to have.
So everything that you said right there, I really like. And the gap between the expectation piece is, I want to hone on this for a second. Travel around, all around the country. One of the biggest gaps I see, especially like with CIOs, is they actually don't leave their office. They might leave their office to go to an event. But the kind of office I'm thinking about is they never like walk down the street. They never go out into the community. A lot of times they can...
And I'll push on you a little bit more. They'll complain when their council member says, the world's not working quite right. Is they don't understand how hard it is. And they don't see the world quite as they should be, as we should be helping them connect the world as it is and as it should be.
And you can only have that empathy when, I think, honestly, like you go out there and start. So if I take your job position, it's like actually meeting the people who fill out the applications. There's actually a really great book. I think it was endorsed. Oh, what is it called? I know the author too. She's going to come on the podcast. I think Obama wrote a review about it. But basically, there was this story on the federal side.
You're Nothing Polka? Jennifer Palka's Recode.
It might be that one. There's a story where they're saying they had some medical health forms and it was taking something like 2 or 3 hours to get the forms filled out. And suddenly they were figuring out, hey, why does it take so long?
Because they didn't hire Soumam yet.
Exactly. And the forms had something like 80 questions on it, of which 90% were irrelevant. And it was like, it's very interesting. They whacked it, and they actually had the executive team come in, and they did the first round where they had them fill out the forms that were 90 questions, and then they had them come in and fill out the other one. And they were shocked. Who would ever fill out the 90 questions, right? And they're like, this is because this was the way it was always done. And until they got leadership involved into actually, hey, why don't you have a little bit of empathy? And this is just, what is the end user experience, right? And so the end user experience is horrible, but the leadership is so disconnected. And so you could bridge that gap together.
And I'm sure those questions are really important, but expecting perfection up front from someone who's struggling to get through a process, not very nice.
Yeah.
So there's a better way rather than putting all our internal problems on the front end of a resident.
And it was like, the people filling out the forms are like single moms who've got a kid crying. They don't have time for that.
Like when we looked at that whole form experience in our project, like we made the partner who was working with us on this start documenting the overall process flow, like every step that a resident has to take till the point in time that they actually get the benefit in their bank account or whatever be the mechanism of the delivery, right? And then they created this, and then they were showing it on the presentation. It was like, I don't know, some 100+ slides. And we said, let's do one thing. Let's print it on pages of paper and let's start laying it on the floor. And let's invite people to see. People have to walk over 200 steps from one end to the other end to completely see the process.
But they got their steps in.
They got their steps in.
Yeah.
But that was very powerful as a signaling mechanism and as an empathy mechanism to understand what is happening with your constituents when they are asking for this. And these are, the other piece is, a lot of these forms, it's not just about the 80 questions. Many person, if I am, let's say, of need a benefit, it's very likely that I qualify for more than one benefit.
Yeah.
I'm asking my name when I'm filing for benefit A. I'm asking my name when I'm filing for a benefit B, for benefit C. If you look at those 80 questions across those 3 forms, 60 questions out of those are being asked 3 times over. Because there's only 10 or 15 questions that are different depending on the benefits. And we are making the...
Can I give you an example of, so the city of Seattle worked with Google.org, their nonprofit arm, on a project called Civiform. And Civiform actually says that question is, if you have this benefit and we get this information, what other things can you qualify for? So by submitting one simple form, you get thousands of dollars worth of benefits. And that's one of the One Seattle initiatives. Is you literally get thousands of dollars of assistance by going through one transactional form that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But that's trying to make life easy and get people help.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Let's finish up with some closing thoughts. I really like this conversation a lot, especially as you start to dig into the real applications for the users. But Chris, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I was just, as I was listening to what we were just talking about, I was thinking how important it is for any public sector organization, really any organization in general, is how do you create that culture of, how do you create that culture of collaboration? What we're working on right now is instead of just these projects coming in that we don't know necessarily if they're the right projects that we should be doing, right? That was the question that we were just talking about, is rather than just dealing with this flood of, when we all deal with it, there's more projects than we have resources, right? Are we doing the right projects? And the only way to know if we're really doing the right projects is we have to be asking the questions. We have to be understanding, is this really going to impact either the organization or impact the constituents? And so one thing that we've done within Central IT in Santa Barbara is we have created a team that's the business relationship management team. And their whole entire role is to go out and meet with all the departments, all the leadership, the board of supervisors on a regular basis and ask really good questions, right? How can we help your department? What are the ideas that you have as a department head to improve how you serve your constituents, right? And when that information comes back to IT, now it's business and operational needs leading the discussion, not technology leading the discussion, right? And I think that's where it really, you start to gain some real traction when you're solving real needs and prioritizing those real needs. And so that's something that we've taken a real concerted effort to just ask a lot of questions, to gather information, and then work to prioritize the initiatives and projects based on those areas that we really feel are going to make the biggest impact.
Yeah, and I like what you like when you ask questions and people feel heard, then people get excited. Like people get, wow, we're going to get some, no joke, traction. We're actually moving the ball up the court, and wow, yeah, then you get more feedback, and it's a vicious loop a little bit in a good way of, wow, okay, people are excited, we're moving in the right direction, we're listening. Yeah, that's a good one. Ma'am, any final thoughts?
I'll say, I think there are two things that's super important in pushing a customer first mindset within organizations. One is giving people the ability to try and fail and being okay with that failure. That's super important to exist as a culture. Because one of the things that I came in and I sensed is that people were afraid of getting things wrong. And whenever they were at that risk, they would either try to defer the decision as long as they can so that if there is a failure, it doesn't come to them, or move up the decision as much as they can. Because then they can say, oh, it was not my decision, my manager took it, or right? So we have to create a culture where you are allowing people to fail at the lowest level, and it's okay to fail as long as you're learning and iterating and improving. The second thing that needs to be solved for is there is never a perfect state. Today's perfect state is going to be imperfect tomorrow. So it's more important to continue to move, even if it's incremental improvement, versus waiting for the perfect solution. And I've seen so much time lost in trying to find the perfect solution versus saying, let's just be a little bit better than
100%.
than yesterday, right? And when you start adding it up over a year, you will realize you've come a long way. But it's very hard to fathom that our brains are not tailored to calculate 0.001 raised to 365 step that you can take.
Absolutely.
Yeah, our minds don't comprehend that at all. And compounding is something that it's not linear, right? Our minds just don't get it. And yeah, and I love if you've ever read Atomic Habits.
I was just going to say, that's exactly
Clear.
the whole premise of that book.
Yeah.
Consistency.
Yeah, it's just consistency, doing those little changes. Rob, any closing thoughts?
I have a couple. I think you do have to get that culture and do it right internally before you can ever do something exceptional externally. And so if we don't have great services and have great interactions internally and create that culture and collaboration across departments, we won't be able to do it for our residents. Yeah. Number two is that ability to work across departments, and our model, what I work with is a portfolio product project office concept where you do that road mapping. It's the right product and project at the right time, and there's clarity, commitment, and urgency, and if there's not, don't do it. But also, as we do our things, about right in time is always better than perfectly right too late. And in communities, we have to make some of those trade-offs. And our councils actually are wonderful when you express it in those terms. They are willing almost always to own that decision if you just communicate. And you'd be amazed how willing and solid a partner they can be when you engage them in that way, rather than not engaging and just bringing out the end result where they have no ownership. And so use the budget process, use the communication through the year, talk about the impact on community, but there's relationships at those sets. And the last one I'll say is, if we're doing our jobs right, there's value we're bringing at 3 levels. And we have to deliver it at 3 levels. Otherwise, I'll tell you, there's an immune response in the organization to technology that develops and innovation. One is you have to be delivering value at the line level, because the people day to day need to see their jobs getting better. There has to be value at the management level, where they have to say, I'm able to organize the work and over a course of a year get things better. And the executives and council have to say, the big initiatives that I want to push, I'm getting those too. But often we see those big initiatives and one or two get done, and then the immune response kicks in and those line levels say, I'm out because I'm not getting anything I need. And then that executive, CIO, city manager, county manager is gone, or the elected person gets out of office. But if we're really good at our craft, we'll make sure that value gets delivered at all three levels so that everyone stays plugged in and they say, I'm getting what I need out of this, and the engine keeps working.
It's great. Well, thank you all for coming on the Public Sector Show by TechTables.
Thank you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.